She brought me to that rooftop dinner to watch me break. Not to talk. Not to fix us. But to humiliate me. There she was, Lydia, laughing too hard at another man's jokes, her hand a little too close to his. The guy? Brandon. Jim Muscles, smug grin, the kind of guy who thinks flexing is a personality trait. I was the husband. The afterthought. She didn't even try to hide it. That night, I didn't just lose a marriage. I watched the version of myself I had been, quiet, loyal, blind, get buried in a restaurant chair under a linen napkin and a bottle of overpriced wine. But I didn't stay broken. This is the story of what happened after. The betrayal, yes, but more than that, the rebuild. The slow, painful process of remembering who I was before I let someone else define my worth. And if you've ever loved someone who mistook your kindness for weakness. If you've ever stood in the ruins and wondered if you'd feel whole again. This story is for you. Because I didn't just survive it. I found peace on the other side. Before anything else, thank you, truly. If you're here, it means you're willing to listen. And for someone who's walked through silence, gaslighting, and the quiet unraveling of trust, being heard means more than you know. This story isn't about revenge. It's not about blame. It's about truth, mine. It's about what happens when love turns into control, when loyalty becomes a leash, and when the person you gave your life to becomes the one who tears it down. But it's also about what comes after. If you've ever been made to feel small, replaceable, or unseen, this story is for you. If you've ever had to pick yourself up, piece by painful piece, and figure out how to breathe again, you'll see yourself in these pages. Not because our paths are identical, but because healing? It speaks a universal language. So take a breath. Clear your mind. And come with me, to the night it all cracked open. To the moments I nearly lost myself. And to the quiet strength I never knew I had. This isn't just where my story ends, it's where yours might begin, too. Let's dig in. Camden. I swear, if that arrogant punk had opened his mouth one more time, I'd have shattered his jaw and turned that smug expression into a permanent grimace. We were at a rooftop bar in downtown Seattle, all mood lighting and overpriced appetizers. I never wanted to be there. Lydia told me we needed to talk. I figured she meant marriage counseling or at least a truce. I didn't expect a trap. There he was, Brandon Kellerman. The coworker. The guy I was always hearing about but never met. He was already there when I arrived, wearing a tailored navy blazer like he'd stepped out of a stock photo shoot, beard too sharp, hair too styled. He gave me that fake half-smile like he'd already won. And Lydia, my wife, was sitting beside him like it was a date. Her hand brushed his arm as she laughed too hard at something he said. A laugh I hadn't heard in months. "Cam," she said with forced calm, gesturing to the empty seat across from them, "this is Brandon. I've mentioned him before." Yeah. She had. Too many times. Her creative director, her work soulmate, the guy who understands her creative side. I'd always had a feeling. I sat down, keeping my tone civil, but my fists were already clenched under the table. Then Brandon leaned in, eyes locked on mine like he was the villain in a mid-budget Netflix thriller. "Let me cut to it, Camden. You've got two choices." He didn't even blink. "Leave with your pride. Or stay and get crushed." Lydia didn't even flinch. She looked relieved. My pulse spiked. I could barely hear over the blood rushing in my ears. I repeated the words in my head like a bad joke. "Leave with your pride. Or stay and get crushed." He thought I'd walk. That I'd roll over and let them erase me from my own life. I took a breath, exhaled slow, and looked him dead in the eye. "You want your jaw intact or wired shut?" Then I stood and cleared the damn table, with his face. Glass shattered. A wine glass exploded, red across Lydia's ivory blouse. Screams erupted. Brandon tried to stand, bad move. I hit him once. Hard. Years of resentment, sleepless nights, and loneliness channeled into that punch. "Cam, stop." You're embarrassing me. Lydia shrieked. Embarrassing her. After she dragged me here to be discarded like a threadbare coat. Security rushed in. I was pulled out, blood on my knuckles, Brandon still wheezing behind me. Outside, the air was cold. The door clicked shut. And I just stood there. Alone. But somehow lighter. I didn't feel rage anymore. Just quiet. And one brutal, undeniable truth, Lydia brought me there to watch me lose. That rooftop dinner wasn't a confrontation. It was a finale. I wasn't interrupting an affair, I was being written out of the script. She'd choreographed every glance, every smirk, every moment with Brandon like it was theater. And I'd walked in, center stage, clueless. A stand-in reading lines while she stared at her leading man across the candlelight. She used to look at me like I was the reason the sun came up. Now she looked at me like I was in her way. Laughing at my heartbreak between bites of ahi tartar. But that night didn't destroy me. It unplugged me. Because I knew one thing, this wasn't over. When I got home, our condo felt wrong. Not messy, not rearranged, just off. Like the energy had shifted. Like the place had already started forgetting I lived there. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. But it wasn't just hers. Something deeper. Muskier. Masculine. Brandon. I walked into our bedroom. The bed was made with tight, pristine corners, something Lydia never cared to do. It felt sterile. Like a room staged for someone else. I sat down. My palms still throbbed from the hit. My mind raced, replaying Brandon's smug smirk, Lydia's icy stare, the heat of her hand on his thigh. My phone buzzed. From her, you didn't have to do that. You embarrassed yourself. Not are you okay? Not let's talk. Just blame. Cold and sharp. And that was it. The flip of the switch. I stood up and began searching, not because I had doubts, but because I needed proof. Something to hold. Something real. I started in the closet. Everything looked normal, until I hit the shoe rack. A new pair, crimson stilettos. Polished. Pricey. Lydia hadn't worn heels around me in months. Next, her vanity. Her tablet sat charging. Unlocked. She always trusted I wouldn't snoop. She was wrong. The first image hit like a gut punch. Her, barely clothed, posing in a hotel mirror. Date stamp, last weekend. She'd said she was at her friend Kara's wine retreat in Walla Walla. One more swipe. There he was. Brandon. Shirtless. Brushing his teeth in the background. My breath caught. My chest burned. There were more photos. Messages. Videos. And suddenly, silence again. But it wasn't weakness anymore. It was resolve. Some of the files were voice notes. His voice, low, smug, calling her my little secret. Her reply. Giggling like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. One clip. She called him daddy. I nearly hurled the tablet across the room. They didn't just cheat, they mocked me. Another message made my skin crawl. He still thinks we're working on our marriage. Poor baby. Poor baby. That one hit harder than my fist had hit Brandon the night before. Suddenly, it all aligned. The late nights at strategy meetings. The wine-stained girls' weekends in Portland. The sudden interest in wearing perfume she never wore for me. Lingerie I hadn't seen. The distance. The eye rolls. The way she went still when I reached for her in bed. She hadn't been mine for a long time. I wasn't her husband anymore, I was just a prop. Something she stood beside to keep up appearances until it was convenient to disappear. The next morning, she breezed into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Hair tied up, no makeup, sipping her cold brew like she hadn't just detonated our life the night before. I was already at the dining table, tablet in front of me. Watching her. Waiting. She looked up. What? She asked, flat. I didn't say a word. I just slid the tablet across the table, screen lit with the thread of their messages. She stopped scrolling her phone. Froze. Her eyes dropped to the screen, and for the first time in months, she was quiet. Finally, she looked up. Her voice didn't even crack. Why were you snooping through my stuff? That was it. No apology. No denial. Just a deflection so hollow it echoed in the space between us. I leaned forward, voice low. You lied. 4 months. You gaslit me, humiliated me, invited him into our lives and treated me like some disposable extra. And now you're mad because I found the truth? She shrugged, like she was discussing weather. You've been boring, Cam. You gave up. I needed something that made me feel. I clenched my jaw. And Brandon was the answer? That guy can't speak a full sentence without flexing his triceps. She smiled. At least he listens. At least I don't feel invisible. That was it. That was the moment I knew she'd never really loved me. Just the idea of stability. I stood. Walked to the bedroom. Started packing. She followed. You're leaving? I zipped the bag. I already left. You already left, Cam, Lydia said as I passed her in the hallway. You just didn't have the guts to say it out loud. I stopped mid-step. What was that? She looked up at me, eyes sharp, expression empty. You were never man enough for me. I didn't reply. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a flinch. I just walked out the front door, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, leaving behind the woman I once thought was home, in a place that now reeked of someone else's cologne and cheap lies. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. That night, I checked into a short-term apartment in Belltown. 4 blank walls. No memories, no perfume ghosting in the air, no photos mocking me from the mantel. Just silence. And the silence? It was brutal. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Lydia, smirking while Brandon played alpha at that rooftop dinner. The way she looked through me, like I was some background noise interrupting her next chapter. The voice notes haunted me. That wasn't the Lydia I married. That woman had dreams. She used to sketch house floor plans on napkins and talk about getting a rescue dog together. We used to walk Green Lake, hand in hand, talking about names for kids we hadn't even started trying for. Now she was whispering things to Brandon that made me feel like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. She called me soft. Predictable. Said I'd probably die paying someone else's mortgage, and he laughed. Good, he said. Let him. They didn't just cheat. They erased me. For 3 days, I didn't respond to her calls. Not once. She never apologized. Never said I'm sorry. Just texts like, you overreacted. We can be civil. Let's talk terms. Like our marriage was some expired lease agreement. On the 4th day, she knocked on my door. I opened it. And there she stood, hair down, no makeup, that innocent gray sweater she used to wear when we binged Netflix on Sundays. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked in like she still owned me. Sat down. Crossed her legs. Unbothered. You've had your tantrum, she said, voice crisp. Now let's figure out what comes next. I leaned against the edge of the kitchen counter, the cool stone grounding me as the storm built inside. You're acting like you didn't just nuke everything we had, I said, voice low. She exhaled, dramatic, tired. It wasn't working, Cam. You were distant. You stopped seeing me. I let out a bitter laugh. I saw you every single day. I tried. You pulled away. You got cold. And instead of saying a damn word, you handed yourself to some gym bro with the personality of a protein bar and gave him what you promised was mine. Don't be so dramatic, she snapped, rolling her eyes. It's not like I planned any of this. No? I stepped closer. Then explain the hotel reservations under your name. The lingerie tags still in the Nordstrom bag. The mirror selfies. The voice notes. The videos. She flinched, barely, but it was there. And explain why Brandon thought he had the right to tell me to step aside like I was just squatting in my own life. Her mouth twisted into something halfway between a smirk and a sneer. You're making this into a crime scene. No, I said, my voice hardening. What you did wasn't murder. It was an assassination. You didn't just leave. You killed the man I was, and you didn't even have the decency to bury what was left. That hit something. She stood up fast, her chair scraping against the hardwood. I needed more, Cam. You don't get it. You stopped trying. You came home, cracked a beer, watched the same shows, became the same safe, beige version of the man I married. So instead of telling me, you started sleeping with someone else and made me believe I was the reason we were falling apart? She headed toward the door. You always had to be the victim. Maybe if you'd been more of a man. Stop right there, I said. I don't still have a wife. I never did. I had a parasite. One that smiled while it drained me. She turned. Dark eyes. Cold voice. You think I didn't suffer too? I wasted years pretending I was happy. You didn't pretend, I shot back. You lied. And then she said it. Flat. Emotionless. I've been with Brandon for 6 months. And you know what? I feel alive again. 6 months. While I was booking a dinner cruise for our anniversary, she was busy gasping someone else's name. But I didn't cry. I just breathed. I just nodded. Good, I said calmly. Then you won't need to hear what I did yesterday. Lydia's brow pinched. What? I reached into the kitchen drawer and dropped a thick folder onto the table with a thud. She hesitated. Then flipped it open. Bank statements. Transfer logs. Screenshots from her private email. Copies of the Airbnb confirmations. The second credit card she thought I didn't know about. Her conversation with Brandon, talking about how to shift her bonus into a side account he couldn't accidentally see. I'd hired someone, a retired detective who owed me a favor from years back when I fixed his back deck for free. He didn't ask questions. Just delivered. Lydia stared at the folder, blood draining from her face. Camden, what is this? I locked eyes with her. Evidence. Her lips parted, but no words came. I'm filing for divorce. Today. And I'm keeping everything. I've already frozen the accounts. That new condo your boy Toy thinks you're affording? You're not. And when he sees this folder, he'll know exactly what happens when you mess with the kind of man you thought was too soft to fight back. She reached toward the folder. I pulled it away. We're done, I said. Get out. For the first time in weeks, her eyes wavered. A flicker of fear. But it was too late for that. Too late for apologies wrapped in crocodile tears. The man who begged for her attention. Who booked anniversary dinners alone. He died on that rooftop. What stood in his place now wasn't angry, it was finished. 3 days later, Brandon showed up outside the architecture firm where I work. Bold move. Real tough guy entrance. Leaning against his matte black Dodge Charger, arms crossed, mirrored sunglasses like he was auditioning for a sequel to Drive. He saw me leaving the parking garage. Camden, he called, casual, like we were meeting for happy hour. You got a second? I didn't answer. Just kept walking. He stepped into my path. Hey. Look, man. I didn't know she'd go about it like that. I figured she'd break it off clean. I didn't want to drag you into that dinner scene. You figured, I repeated. I looked him over. He smelled like cologne and insecurity. And I wasn't in the mood for games. You figured, I repeated, voice calm but loaded. You figured you could slide into my wife's life. Into her body. And I'd just vanish like I never existed. Brandon raised his hands, palms out. I get it, man. You're pissed. But let's not pretend she didn't make her own choices. I didn't force her. I stepped closer. She chose. And so did you. So whatever fantasy you had of taking my place, erase it. I leaned in. You're not the alpha. You're a side piece who got a little too confident. His grin faltered. A crack in the mirror. You should know, he said, puffing up again, she's talking about moving in with me. Perfect, I said. She'll look great on your Instagram. Right next to your ego and your protein powder collection. His jaw twitched. You don't scare me, Camden. Then you're even dumber than I thought, I replied, leaning in, low and steady. Because I should. For a second, just a flicker, he flinched. Just enough to see the truth behind the facade. He wasn't built for conflict. He was built for cameras and compliments. I turned and walked away. Because the real damage? It wasn't going to come from a punch. It would come from everything I'd prepared. Back at my rental, I opened my laptop and dove back into the digital trail she left behind. Financial records. Hotel charges. Spa packages billed to our joint account. Jewelry he wore in photos, my money. She even transferred money to an account under her sister's name. Sloppy. Bold. Arrogant. But what hit hardest wasn't the betrayal, it was the ease. How naturally Lydia lied. How convincingly she'd said I love you while sleeping in another man's arms. Every receipt I printed. Every password cracked. Every careless message between her and Brandon. Another nail in the coffin of the woman I once trusted with my future. That night, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. Lydia. I let it ring 3 times. Then answered. Camden, she said, soft. Measured. Less venom now. What? She hesitated. I didn't think you'd react like this. Like what? I said. Like a man who got played. Cheated on, humiliated, and treated like a spare part. I didn't mean to hurt you. I stared at the wall. That's the only part one actually believe. Yes, you did, I said into the phone, voice low but firm. You just didn't think I'd fight back. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, shallow, nervous. He's not who I thought, Lydia finally said. I said nothing. I thought he'd be stronger. Protective. Translation, she thought Brandon would swoop in and shield her from consequences. That he'd handle the mess. Be the safety net I once was. Another pause. I made a mistake. I closed my eyes and shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. No, Lydia. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is losing your temper in an argument. What you did. I exhaled slowly. You built this. Lie by lie. Week after week. Hotel bed after hotel bed. I paused. You just didn't think I'd be the one to burn it down faster than you could stack it. She tried to speak again, but I was done. I hung up. I didn't need her apologies. I didn't want her guilt. I had spent too long letting her rewrite the story in her favor, warping my reflection into someone weak, small, forgettable. But standing in that quiet rental apartment, holding the evidence of everything she destroyed, I finally felt something I hadn't touched in months. Clarity. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming myself, my name, my peace, my damn dignity. Let her keep Brandon and his flex for the camera lifestyle. I had something better. Freedom. And I was going to use it. The divorce moved quicker than I thought. Maybe because Lydia didn't want too much of the truth on court record. She assumed she could charm her way into a clean break. Claim she fell out of love. But the moment my attorney laid out the financial trail, every dollar stolen, every secret booking, every message she forgot to delete, her tone changed. No tears. No outbursts. Just cold, quiet damage control. Our last meeting was in a sterile downtown office. Mediated, civil, distant. She wore a navy suit, no makeup. Trying to appear composed. Like a woman who hadn't once moaned another man's name in my car. She leaned in during a pause, voice hushed. "Why are you doing this? You're humiliating us both." I looked straight ahead. "You're not ashamed of what you did," I said. "You're just ashamed it cost you. You're just embarrassed people found out," I said. Lydia sat back, lips tight, eyes sharp, but she didn't say another word for the rest of the mediation. When it ended, I stood and walked out with my spine straight and a clean slate. She walked out with her mask cracked and her gym toy waiting at the curb, parked in his matte black Charger, texting her like a lost puppy. I thought I'd feel satisfied. I didn't. There's no victory lap after betrayal. No gold medal for surviving infidelity. Just silence. And numbness. And after that, a slow rebuild. Nights were the worst. Not because I missed her, but because the echoes still lingered. The silence where her fake laughter used to live. The cold side of the bed where she used to pretend she was tired. The way I'd catch myself halfway through a text, then remember she was probably tangled in someone else's sheets. It was never about missing Lydia. It was about reprogramming muscle memory. I started going to the gym. Not to look like Brandon, and definitely not to chase validation. I went to sweat it out, burn the grief out of my bones. The poison. The shame. The buried anger. Set by set, I started remembering who I was before her. Not broken. Not bitter. Just me. One night, a buddy from the firm dragged me to a bar in Capitol Hill. Said I needed to step back into the world. I almost passed, but something in me said go. That's where I saw her. Not Lydia. Rachel, her sister. She walked in with a couple friends, stopped cold when she spotted me at the bar. After a second, she came over. "Camden. Wow. I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I said. She looked down at her drink, then met my eyes. "I heard everything. I'm sorry." I nodded. "Don't be. You didn't betray me." She gave a soft, guilty smile. "I tried to talk her out of it, you know? When I found out. She told me to mind my own business. Didn't surprise me." Rachel tilted her head. "You doing okay?" I shrugged. "Some days are better than others." She leaned on the bar, studying me. "You know. Lydia was always the one who needed the spotlight. She always had to win," I said, watching the swirl of whiskey in my glass. "Even if it meant destroying something beautiful." Rachel didn't speak right away. She just stared into her drink, lips pressed into a tight line. Then finally, quietly, she said, "Only person Lydia's ever really loved is herself." It landed harder than I expected. And somehow, that helped. Later that night, I walked the streets of Ballard under a clear, quiet sky. One of those rare Seattle nights when the air feels clean, like something heavy has finally lifted. Like the toxins bled out of your system without you noticing. For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. Not out of victory. Not out of revenge. But because I finally understood what peace tasted like. No more pretending. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. And nothing, not Lydia, not Brandon, not even the ghost of the man I used to be, could take that clarity away. About a week after that night, I got a message that caught me completely off guard. It was from Brandon. "I need to talk. Man to man." I almost laughed when I read it. The same guy who stood in front of me weeks ago, chest puffed out like a gym class bully, now wanted to talk like we were on the same level. My first instinct was to block him. But curiosity's a hell of a drug. I told him we could meet, in public. Neutral ground. I chose a quiet coffee shop tucked on the edge of Fremont. He showed up late. Different. Slower. Hair unkempt. Wrinkled shirt. Eyes ringed with shadows. He sat across from me and didn't speak for a full 30 seconds. Then finally, he muttered, "I think I made a mistake." I didn't respond. "She's not what I thought," he went on. "I mean, yeah, she's beautiful. But he hesitated, then whispered the word like it tasted bitter. Poison." I leaned back in my chair. "Welcome to the club. She used to talk about you," he said, like a confession. "Said you didn't care. That you ignored her. That you hadn't touched her in months." I raised an eyebrow. "And you believe that?" He looked away. I wanted to. And there it was. The truth. He needed to believe I was the villain. So he could live with what he'd done. "She's already seeing someone else," he said finally, voice low. That made me pause. "Wait," I said. "She's cheating on you?" Brandon nodded slowly, the shame on his face so thick I almost pitied him. "She met him at some yoga class," he muttered. "Guy with a boat. Smooth. Wears beads. She swears it's nothing. Says I'm being paranoid." He rubbed his temples. "But I know the signs now. The late texts. The girls' weekend in Spokane. The new underwear that somehow never shows up in the laundry." He looked up at me, eyes dull. "It's déjà vu. But this time, I'm you." I should have felt vindicated. Triumphant. I should have leaned back and said I told you so with a smug grin. But all I felt was tired. "You played your part, Brandon," I said, my voice even. "Now you get to see what it's like on the other side." He exhaled, long and heavy. "I don't think she's capable of real love." "She's not," I said. "She's only capable of chasing attention. And when that attention fades, she finds a new audience." He didn't respond. Just sat there, stewing in the storm he helped create. I stood up, pushing in my chair. "Good luck, man." "I mean that." He blinked. "You're not mad anymore?" "I was," I said, slinging my jacket over my shoulder. "But anger's heavy. And I've carried enough of it already." Outside, the sun cut through the gray April sky, falling across my face like something sacred. Warm. Clean. I walked slowly, breathing in the salt-tinged breeze drifting in from the sound. I felt light. That night, I sat barefoot on my porch, a glass of bourbon in hand, listening to nothing but the creak of the wood and the occasional hum of passing cars. No buzzing phone. No fake apologies. No carefully crafted lies. Just me. Funny how betrayal feels like death when it first hits. But later, it starts to feel like a beginning. A harsh reset. A shedding of skin. Lydia called once after the divorce was finalized. Left a voicemail I never listened to. I deleted it before her voice could stain the silence. She didn't get closure. She didn't get the last word. That belonged to me now. I started traveling again. Weekend hikes. Road trips. Little things I abandoned while trying to keep a hollow marriage alive. I reconnected with my brother. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Lydia called him toxic. Turns out, he just saw through her. Rachel texted sometimes, never too much. Just to check in. A meme. A reminder that not everyone wanted something from me. I appreciated that. She just let me exist. One night, without preamble, Lydia sent me a photo of an old Christmas from years ago. There I was, smiling with her and the whole family gathered together. I stared at that photo for a long time, the genuine smile on my face, the way I once held her hand. Back then, it wasn't an act. I wasn't faking it. She was. That was the stark difference. I've learned to stop mourning what never truly was. The love I thought I had. The marriage I believed we shared. It was my truth, not hers. And that realization? It meant everything. Because now, I've got something she'll never have. Peace. Accountability. A soul that didn't corrode when the lies finally came crashing down. While she's probably still out there chasing that fleeting high, the next man to worship her until he finally sees behind her smile, I'm building again. Brick by brick, with something real. Months passed. Seasons shifted. I stopped counting days and instead celebrated the small victories, waking up without that gnawing pit in my stomach, eating without a constant metallic tang of anxiety, sleeping through the night without nightmares of her voice whispering deceit. Then, one morning, I opened my email and saw her name again, Lydia. The subject line read, Camden. Please, just hear me out. I froze, staring at it for nearly 5 minutes before clicking it open. Camden, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't write if it weren't important. I messed up. I see that now. Brandon is gone. I'm alone. Her words spilled out. She had time to think about everything, about us, about what she did, what I did, and what it all meant. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but she needed me to understand that she was lost. That she wasn't trying to hurt me, only to feel something, anything. And she admitted, in a way that hurt more than her betrayal ever did, that the only time she ever felt truly seen was when I was around. That maybe I was taken for granted. I read her message once. Then again. And finally, I deleted it without replying. Because here's the thing, she never truly wanted me. Not then, and not now. She didn't want me, not the version of me who had learned how to breathe without her, who had stopped begging for love disguised as scraps of attention. She wanted the man I used to be. The one who bent. Who shrank himself to fit into her version of happiness. Who twisted his needs into silence just to keep the peace. But that man died the night she humiliated me in public and looked at me like I was dead weight she couldn't wait to unload. What Lydia really missed was the safety I gave her. The loyalty. The comfort of knowing someone would always clean up the emotional wreckage she left in her wake. She didn't miss me. She missed being adored. That's the difference. And by then, I'd already started seeing someone new. Her name was Claire. I met her by accident, at a bookstore tucked between a florist and a bakery in Queen Anne. I dropped a worn copy of The Stranger by Camus. She picked it up, glanced at the title, and said, heavy read, for someone with kind eyes. We talked for an hour, standing by the philosophy section. Then coffee. Then long walks through Discovery Park. Then nothing, for a few weeks. Because I needed space. I told her I had scars. She just smiled and said, good. Scars mean you're healing. Claire didn't rush me. Didn't dig. She just showed up. Steady. Kind. Honest. With her, everything felt easy. No performance. No eggshells. She never brought up Lydia, except once. It was after my phone buzzed and I froze when I saw that name light up again. You don't owe me the story, she said. But if you ever want to tell it, I'll be here. And I did. Eventually. It was a quiet Sunday. Rain tapping the windows. Her hand in mine. I told her everything. Not for pity. Just to let it go. Claire didn't interrupt. She didn't ask for more. When I finished, she said, that was never about you. That was her broken reflection, looking for a mirror. That line stayed with me. A few weeks later, I drove past the old house. Ours, back when it felt sacred. It looked smaller now. Faded. The lawn was overgrown. Shutters crooked. Like it had given up trying to impress anyone. I didn't stop. I just kept driving. And I smiled, not out of spite. Not because I'd won. But because I survived. Lydia once said I was too soft. She was wrong. That she thought I'd crumble without her. that I'd fold without the chaos she brought into every room. But here I was, standing tall. Scarred, sure. But unshaken. The storm came. And it passed. And all it really did was clear the horizon. Now, I see things better. I trust sharper. I walk steadier. I laugh deeper. There's a strange kind of peace that comes from losing everything. It strips you bare. Makes you appreciate what actually matters. Like mornings that start with black coffee and no tension hiding between the lines. Like evenings wrapped in someone's voice who doesn't weaponize silence. Someone who speaks gently, and means it. Because real love? It doesn't arrive like a wrecking ball. It walks in soft. And stays when everything else runs. It was a crisp Friday evening. That kind of early autumn in Seattle where the sky turns a deep navy and the air smells like new beginnings. I was sitting on the balcony of my new place, smaller than the old house, but warmer in all the ways that count. Claire was inside, humming as she moved around the kitchen. Barefoot. Dancing like no one was watching to a song only she could hear. I watched her for a while through the glass. And something in me settled. Not relief. Not distraction. Peace. Not the kind you fake. The kind you earn, after walking barefoot through betrayal and coming out the other side with your soul still in one piece. I thought about Lydia again. Not often anymore. But sometimes. Like you remember a fever dream, blurry, unreal, with flashes of pain that don't sting the same way they used to. She was a name in a closed chapter. And Brandon? Just a footnote. A lesson. I learned that love without respect is poison. That loyalty without honesty is just a leash. That some people only know how to take, until you forget you ever had something to give. But I also learned that surviving betrayal doesn't make you bitter. It makes you aware. It makes you grateful for softness when it finds you again. Claire stepped outside, wrapped in a blanket, and leaned her head on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking." "About her?" I paused. Then smiled. "About how far I've come." She didn't press. She didn't need to. Some stories don't need repeating. The ending already said enough. Some people don't need to be hated. They just need to be understood, and then left behind. I looked out over the horizon, where the sun dipped gently into Puget Sound, streaking the sky with amber and deep navy. A new chapter had already begun. Not with fireworks. Not with vengeance. Just honesty. If I could speak to the version of me from back then, sitting at that rooftop restaurant, heartbeat cracking with every forced laugh Lydia gave that man, I'd tell him this. You won't break. She'll try to convince you it was you. That you were the burden. That you didn't do enough, say enough, be enough. But you were. You were the anchor. The stability. The one who stayed. You were the heartbeat in a marriage that had flatlined long before you realized. And when she walks out, thinking she's sprinting towards something better, she's not. She's just running from her own reflection. Let her go. Heal. Grow. Remember who you were without the weight of her voice in your ear. And one day, when real love finds you again, it'll be soft. Not desperate. Not performative. Gentle. Steady. It won't raise its voice to be heard or hide behind chaos to feel exciting. It will show up. And stay. Claire reached across the small table on our balcony and squeezed my hand. I looked over at her, and for a second, everything inside me went still. She wasn't trying to fix me. Or complete me. Or mold me. She just saw me. Fully. Without flinching. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in a very long time. Home. Not the kind with a mortgage or picture frames or manicured lawns. But the kind that lives in presence. In stillness. In the way someone holds your hand without asking why it's shaking. I looked at her and said it. Not out of reflex. Not to fill the silence. But because it was true. I'm happy. She smiled, leaned into my shoulder, and whispered back, good. And this time? This time, I meant it. If you've made it this far, you've walked with me through every lie, every scar, and every quiet step toward rebuilding. So let me ask you something, what would you have done in my shoes? Seriously. I want to hear it. Drop a comment, not just for me, but for anyone else out there going through their own kind of betrayal. Let them know they're not alone. Let me know I'm not alone. Because this story? It wasn't just about a failed marriage or an affair. It was about losing yourself and clawing your way back. If you felt something reading this, if you saw even a sliver of your own story between these lines, don't stay silent. Speak up. Share your thoughts. Tell me what you'd say to the version of me who thought he wouldn't survive the fallout. I've got my piece now, but your words might give someone else theirs. Here's what I'll leave you with, and it's something I wish someone had told me sooner: never let someone else's chaos convince you you're the problem. Love shouldn't cost you your identity. It shouldn't demand you disappear. If you're in something that feels like you're constantly bleeding for it, stop and ask yourself why. Love should build you, not break you. So, to everyone reading this, heal loudly. Forgive yourself first. And when you find something good again, let it in. You deserve to be chosen without conditions. You deserve quiet mornings. Honest eyes. Laughter that doesn't leave bruises. And if you're already living that truth, share it. Tell me what freedom looks like to you now. This is where I leave my story. Now I want to hear yours. Drop it below. I'm listening. Camden.